Hey, Baylor fans, this is your call to gear up with Harley-Davidson of Waco. Whether you're hitting the open road or tailgating at McLean Stadium, we've got the ride to match your Bear pride. Check out our wide selection of new and pre-owned motorcycles, visit our service department, or shop all the latest gear and accessories to show off your Baylor spirit and Harley pride. Visit us today and find your freedom on two wheels. Harley-Davidson of Waco, where Baylor fans never ride alone. Visit in-store or at hdwaco.com. Sic Em Bears.
Hi, and welcome into our Sic Em Podcast presented by Harley-Davidson of Waco. You're in for a real treat this week as we have former Baylor quarterback Seth Russell with us today. And Seth, we appreciate your time. Always great to visit with you.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on this week, John.
You bet. How about for you and going back? Let's start by going back. High school, Garland High School, even prior to that. Did you grow up in Garland?
I did not. No. So this town may ring a bell with another quarterback, Midlothian, Texas. I grew up there originally.
Midlothian.
Yeah, grew up there originally. My two older brothers went through from third grade all the way up through, graduating. So I bet we were there, for my entire life. Grew up there, and then going into our freshman year, I was transferred to Waxahachie High School. Wasn't, things just didn't work out, and then ended up transferring to Garland, where I started my sophomore year there, and then just kind of progressed. Jeff Jordan, who was the head coach there, he's now, Sonny Dykes, his right-hand man at TCU, on that standpoint. So just kind of cool how all the connections are just in the college spaces, and just how it all tied out. And ended my, began my next steps career at Garland, and then obviously into Waco.
Gotcha. Very cool. So we should refer to Midlothian as the cradle of Baylor quarterbacks, right?
Sure. Yeah, that works.
A lot of wins, a lot of yards, a lot of offense came out of Midlothian to Baylor. So you and Bryce. So that's cool. Very good. How about the recruiting process? What was that like for you coming out of high school?
Yeah, it was interesting. I was a 3-sport athlete. Played football, basketball, baseball, and basketball kind of overlapped. And so I chose basketball over baseball, and then I ran track. And so wasn't highly recruited going at my junior year. I broke my finger. And so I was out like the first 6 or 7 games of my junior year, which that's like your, if you're recruiting, that's your heavy recruiting year. And so didn't have great numbers. I went to a lot of camps, which some of them were good. Some of them were probably just money grabs, but it's just part of the game, right? You just never know where the opportunity is going to happen. And I went up to Kansas for one of their camps, met with their coaches. They all, it was a great time. They had Turner Gill, who was the head coach there at that time, and they showed a lot of interest. Had a couple of other schools like Central Arkansas. I think I had South Florida. A couple of other schools that had offered me, but they were kind of smaller, smaller D1, D2 schools. And I was like, man, my two older brothers played football at Texas A&M. And I was like, I got to go D1. I mean, you got to continue the tradition. And so, but long story short, had the opportunity to, Coach Gill, and they ended up offering me, Baylor hadn't offered at that time. I'd kept in touch with Monty, who was the quarterback, offensive coordinator at that time. And, but Baylor had this guy, I think his name's Robert Griffin.
Right. Robert something. Yeah.
If you ever heard that, the second or third, I can't remember.
Yeah.
But they still had him playing. And so I remember calling up Monty at the beginning of my senior year. It was like, hey, are y'all thinking y'all may have like any openings coming up this next season? Kind of starting the conversation or continuing it. He goes, well, probably not. We're all full at this time. So I was like, hey, all good. Appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity. And so called Coach Gill up, committed at the beginning of my senior season, and then went through the whole year. Had a good year, and then at the end of the season, that whole coaching staff gets fired.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, this is interesting. I'm sure a lot of players have gone through that, right? Hey, what's that next step look like? And so, of course, prayed about it a lot, talked to my family. I gave Kansas the first option because I wanted to go there. They had a great, schooling program. I wasn't a great student, let's just be honest, but I tried my hardest. But on the flip side, I had a good friend there that was on staff, kind of on and off, and he was saying, "Hey, I'll let you know who the new coach is coming in, and I'll let you kind of decide. I'll give you kind of the background of whoever it is coming. I can't give you the name of it just yet until that gets released." And then about a week later, I get a call, and he was like, "Man, he's like, I love you." He goes, "You're a phenomenal, person, athlete, quarterback, yada, yada, yada." He goes, "This may or may not be the best fit for you."
Right.
From a system standpoint. Right. And so there's that plane again. Yep. Anyways, so whenever that happened, I called Monty again. Robert had just won the Heisman. And so, thinking in my head, I'm like, there's no way he's going to stay another year.
Right.
I mean, this breakout year. But, crazier things have happened. Called Monty. He goes, "Well, Robert hadn't decided yet if he wants to declare or not. If he does, give me a call back." Right. So he kind of left it, my responsibility. He wasn't, it was kind of a test, I think. He declares, I call him back. I was like, "Hey, what's up?" He was like, "Well, we're not sure if we're going to take another quarterback, but hey, go ahead, come down for an official visit, meet with the team, meet with Art, meet with the staff, and we can see what we can go from there." So this was 3 weeks before signing day when all of this.
Gosh. Yeah.
So, I'm kind of I'm not really a stressor, but I'm just like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? We got to get something figured out. And so that first weekend I went up to Kansas, met with the staff there. It was, oh gosh, this guy's slipping my mind. Who was the coach who got hired on there?
Was it Les Miles?
No, it was,
Miles?
No, it was from Notre Dame.
Charlie Weiss.
Charlie Weiss. Yeah, Weiss.
Yeah, gotcha.
Weiss, went up there, met with him. Just wasn't a good fit. I mean, just personality wise and just, the system and so on and so forth. And so gave them first option or just to kind of see if it was going to be a good fit. It ended up not being. Then next week I went down to Waco. And just everything just kind of started unfolding in a positive way. Met with the team, met with the staff, watched some film with them a little bit, just kind of like breaking down things. Or like, "Hey, we'll give you a call tomorrow. So keep your phone handy." And so next day they call me, they offer me. And then within that day, I committed to Baylor and then the rest was kind of history.
Yeah, exactly. You can see it was almost divine intervention, wasn't it? I mean, the way it wasn't a straight path. It wasn't easy, but the way it turned out, man, it turned out as good as it possibly could have.
Oh yeah. It's funny, they always say like, until you actually experience it, which I think everybody has at some level, you just may not recognize it, is, you have what you think your trajectory is.
Right.
And then it's like, just as soon as you think you have it figured out, there's a bomb that's dropped and you got to adjust and figure out, hey, who do you believe in? Who do you trust in? Right. Are you going to try to control the outcome or are you just going to let, the Lord control the outcome? And 10 times out of 10, whenever you let him control it, it's normally going to work out pretty well.
Exactly. That's great. Thanks for telling that story. When you came in, were you a gray shirt? Do I remember that right?
No, I was. Okay. Yeah, I was a straight red shirt. Yeah,
okay, straight red shirt.
Yeah, I think Nick and Bryce, I think gray shirted.
That's what it was. Okay, yeah. Sorry that I had that wrong. But so you came in 12 and you kick Rob out of here. So you boot Rob out of Baylor, which was a good move for everybody, for him and everybody. And then 12, you go through a redshirt year. And Nick is the number one quarterback. What's it like to go through that first season as a redshirt?
Yeah, I was. I tried to take the humble approach of I don't know anything. I don't know, like, I mean, I know how, I mean, I kind of ran a somewhat similar spread type of offense, but, you know, I tried to learn and pick up as much as I could. I mean, with, you know, sitting out at the beginning of the season, you know, Coach Bryles was like, hey, you're not playing this year. I mean, unless like things just get super crazy, dumb, stupid, you know, so on, you're not going to touch the field. So he's like, I want you to develop as a quarterback. I want you to develop as a leader. You know, that's where, you know, Coach Kazadi and the strength staff, I mean, that's where they really stepped in. They really took responsibility of the young guys of like, hey, you know, let's just be honest. The coaches aren't going to pay you much attention. Let's just be honest. Right?
All right.
This is where you decide if you want to step up as a man or if you still want to be a kid, right? This is where kind of that growth stage is, where your development is. And so I took that as, you know, as a challenge. I mean, it's a negative, it's a positive challenge of like, hey, we want you to develop. You know, of course, I was over running scout team with Coach Bennett and those guys. And, you know, Coach Bennett will tell you right now, like, I think I got kicked off a scout team, I think 3 or 4 weeks in, because, you know, they would show us the play and who they want us to throw it to.
Right.
And the play would go. And I'm like, that dude is triple covered. There's a guy over here that has nobody within 15 yards. And so I throw it to him.
Yeah.
Bennett and Gush and those guys come over and just start ripping into me. And they're like, you know, you freshman, you know, you think you know it all, blah, blah, you know, yada, 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 some other choice words. And then he was like, get out of here. I was like, yes, I get to go watch defense and actually, you know, learn our offense. And so, but no, it was fun kind of just jumping in. And obviously, you know, Nick being the savant that he is, I mean, just such a smart player. I mean, you know, he'll tell you right now, he wasn't the most athletic, right? He didn't have the strongest arm, but he had the anticipation. He had the understanding of the game, of who his players were, where to put the ball when he needed. You know, if you watch his anticipation, whenever he would throw the ball, he would, like a normal quarterback will normally throw it like if the receiver is like within maybe either hip to hip or maybe one step before hip to hip of when they would throw the ball from anticipation. Nick was throwing it maybe 3 or 4 steps before being hip to hip. Because he was letting the ball go because he knew where he needed to put it because he didn't have the arm strength to get it out, you know, 50, 60, 70 yards if needed. So he couldn't wait. Like I said, that just goes into, you know, his mentality. And then obviously, you know, that next step, you know, being behind Bryce, of course, you know, I took that personally. I'll just be honest. Just like, you know, I mean, it was friendly competition. You know, I think it made all of it, you know, it definitely made me better. You know, it may have made him better too, just from like, hey, you know, if something happens, like I'm ready to go. Like it's, I mean, you know, you think of it almost like, you know, UT right now. I mean, if Ewers goes down, I mean, Arch, he's biting at the bit to get out there. And so I think very similar situation of, hey, Bryce is the leader of this team, you know, Quinn's leader of that team. Like, it's like, he has to lose that. He has to force himself to lose that position for the next person to come in. And so, but I think all in all, you know, I learned from the way that Bryce played, right? Mm-hmm. You know, hey, he's more of a kind of sit in and let the plays develop, get the balls out. And he had the arm strength. Obviously, went to the NFL, did really well there. And so really kind of took bits and pieces of what Nick did, what Bryce did, and what I was really good at, and really tried to, you know, develop into my own form of a quarterback.
That was hard for you though, wasn't it? I mean, you wanted to play, you knew you were good enough to play, you know, but Bryce was ahead of you. I know that you were a good teammate. You really were, no question about that, but that was kind of hard to go through.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you're an athlete, like I was never on the sideline growing up. I was always like, whatever it was, I was either starting or in the rotation. I was always on the field. Like I was always, you know, hate to say, you know, if you're picking teams, I was normally one of the first or 2 picked, right? Sure. Just right. Always. I mean, just from a competitive standpoint. So sitting on the sideline I was not happy about it because I'm like, I know I can make a difference. But I had to figure out, you know, maybe it wasn't on the field, but it was off the field, right? Hey, pushing guys to be better, right? Whether that was, getting extra reps with guys that may have been on kind of the fringe if they had to get in for a couple plays, they were ready to go type of standpoint. But yeah, no, it was definitely not easy by any means. Just, there may have been a couple of times where, actually, I know there was definitely a couple of times where Bryce and I, we had some tiffs, along the way, just for, hey, just whether it was, working with the ones on extra time or, just whatever it was. I mean, just, it's like, I was trying to get my reps in too, but
Right.
I was trying to do it to think of like making everybody better. Right. If my number is called, I don't want to be somebody on the sideline that's never worked with any of these guys that I'd be playing with. Right. Because it happened a couple of times. Right.
That's right. Yeah.
Northwestern State, like that was my first start ever after Bryce kind of, had his back injury. It's like, I mean, you just never know, but you also want to, I respected the heck out of Bryce and, in his position. And I never took the thought of like trying to undermine him because that was never, that doesn't help anybody. That was never an intention. It was just, hey, I can get some extra reps, with some of these guys and whatever it was. I think it was making everybody better because the more reps you take, obviously the better you're going to be from just a complimentary standpoint.
Yeah. Well, you're just a competitor. That's all it is. And you wanted to be out there, but you're a good teammate also. 13 and 14, you get some snaps, some late in game snaps. That Northwestern State game in 13, you got the start when Bryce was hurt. Was that a 6-touchdown game for you, Northwestern State?
You would know better than me, John.
Yeah. That's the way I remember it. Okay, so
I know I was done in the first half of that game. It may have
That's
been,
right. Only the first half. Yeah. But
yeah.
What was that like? You got that taste. You got the start because Bryce was out with an injury.
Oh, it was a tease. Let's just be honest, right? It's
right.
Get out there and then you Northwestern State wasn't the best team. It was a great team for me to start against, rather than coming in, against a, Big 12 opponent that may be ranked and you're going against the dogs. It was good to kind of get a feel of what it eventually turned into. But then again, like that, I took that mindset that now it was real of like, okay, now I can actually do this. Like the system is so friendly to quarterbacks. It's an awesome, place to play. The atmosphere being in McLean Stadium at that time. All of the variables were in my favor, just to perform at a high level. And so, and then it was a tease. Let's be honest, because I think Bryce came back that next week.
Right.
I can't remember. I think it was Iowa State. Maybe that was the first conference game. I can't remember what the first conference game was. But yeah, then I didn't get another start after that till the next season. So that's okay. I was excited to at least get an opportunity to show that, I'm not just a backup on the sideline. Right? I can run the program if I needed to, right? If my number ever got called again.
And you ran it really well. You said the system was friendly to a quarterback, but that is only because of how good you were at running that system also. What was that like? What were that offense? What were the reads? Everything happened quick. It was tempo, the reads, everything, point a minute, is what you guys were doing at that point. Explain that process.
Yeah. So whenever I say easy and simple, it was all developed in practice, right? Because practice in an off season. So the way that we trained, with Cause, we were taking reps, whether it was sprints, whatever it was, like every 20 seconds. We were doing those, 40-yard reps, sled pulls, 300s, whatever it was. But then taking that and transferring it into the actual game scenario. Within practice, we were snapping the ball every 10 seconds. Like we didn't care what the outcome was. That's what film was for, was to break down. It was like, hey, It's like, hey, we snap the ball, we get the ball out of our hands, and like our managing crew, like the guys who were the managers who would set the ball.
Right.
I mean, they were flying around. I mean, it was like art watching that. I mean,
that's right.
Watching like just the poetry, just with how they would move the ball, and just that helped us from a team standpoint really get into understanding what an actual rhythm looks like. Now there were times in practice where we had a bad 6 or 7, 8 plays, right? And it would tick me off and it'd tick everybody else off, but we had to come back from that. And so, but yeah, from a quarterback friendly standpoint, there was the nice thing, the defense was always going to be wrong, whatever they decided to do. If they were going to have a heavy box, or if they're going to have more defensive players kind of fitting into the run, we had the option as quarterback, if we knew it well enough, to say, hey, easy, check into a quick run play or a quick pass play, pass pro it up. And then obviously our receivers were who they were. I mean, you try to put one-on-one coverage, even if you try to bracket somebody. I mean, we saw multiple times with Corey, they would try to double team him. He's like, I'm going to get open. Like, I don't care if you put 3 people on me. I'm going to get open. Right. And we would have those conversations on the sideline of just like, he's like, Seth, he's like, you and I, like, just trust me. He's like, I will be where you put the ball. I'm like, I know you will. And so that's how we had such a good, there, and then him just being a competitor as well. But yeah, it wasn't only just me, competing at a high level, or at least executing. It was all the pieces that were in play, right? Hey, our offensive line in 15, I mean, by far, I mean, I think I had like an average, you could fact check me, like somewhere around 4 to 6 seconds, like every snap to throw the ball.
Oh man.
Like,
yeah.
I could sit back there, knit a scarf and then throw the ball, wherever I needed to. Like they were holding some guys off. And even if they brought blitzes, our system was built in to say like, hey, basically hot routes. You probably heard that, hot route, where our inside receiver, like if they saw a blitz, they would be yelling like hot. And like we would see it and we just get the ball out of our hands now. Right. Yeah. So even if they caught it for a 3 or 4 yard, even if it was like a bang, bang play, that's still a good run. In the concept of things of 3 to 4 yards, even if it's a quick stop or out. And the majority of the time they were catching it, making somebody miss, and then maybe getting an extra 5 to 10 to 20 yards. Right. And so it was our run game is what set up all of that. But then also our quick pass game we considered that our run game as well. And so even though we threw the ball, 40, 50 times a game, probably 10 to 12, maybe 15 of those were considered runs in our playbook.
Interesting. So 13 and 14, Bryce is number 1. You're there, you're ready. Back-to-back Big 12 championships. How about closing down the case? You were part of that team that played the last game, turned out the lights at Floyd Casey Stadium, and then opened up McLean Stadium in 2014. I mean, that was, on the heels of Rob's Heisman in 2011. Those were, great times for Baylor football.
Yeah, you remember the cold games, but you don't remember them being as cold whenever you win.
For sure.
Right. There was, I think another really cold game was against Oklahoma State in Stillwater. I think we ended up losing that game. But I just remember that one. Cold. I think say that again.
Brutally cold in Stillwater.
Yeah. I mean, the wind was, twirling, but just back to, and I think that all ties back to just what Robert and the team before them, 8, 9, 10, 11, just starting that momentum build, right? They don't get the credit. Like it was just, it shows 13 and 14 as Big 12 champs. It was built on the backs of those guys, from the preceding years to be able to start building that tradition, Art, stepping in and creating what, arguably one of the, best, quote unquote, build back programs, I think, in history.
Mm-hmm. Very cool.
And I think, from seeing that, being a part of it, closing the case, that was really cool. But then on the flip side of, hey, starting off at McLean Stadium, I mean, it's crazy to think that stadium's already 10 years old?
10 years old. Yeah. This year.
It's so funky. This year. And so, but it still looks brand new, and they've done a great job of keeping it up. And And then obviously all the other things being built around, the university and with the basketball arena and the Fudge facility and, the Herd Center. I mean, it's just blowing up, which is built off the backs of those guys from, whenever Art came in that first year.
That's true. Yeah. So 13 and 14, Bryce as the starter, he moves on. 15 going into 15. You've been there. You would think you're the heir apparent, to step in at quarterback, but you're not the only quarterback. I mean, you had some competition that year, didn't you?
Sure. Yeah. If you want to call it competition. I'm just kidding. Derek, don't hurt me. Derek, don't hurt me. No, I'm just kidding. No, I love Jared. He's doing fun. He's in the NFL. He's doing a phenomenal job there. But yeah, it was friendly. It was friendly but edgy competition, right? Which I think that's what, right. It's kind of like I wouldn't say karma, because I think I kind of created that a little bit with Bryce. And I think this may have been kind of a little bit of a get back at you type of deal. And of course you had Chris Johnson there too, who was competing. But it was, I knew mentally, I was like, there's no way this freshman's coming in and taking my spot, or Chris coming in and taking my spot. I mean, but like I said, I still had to earn it. I mean, it's nothing, Coach Browse never gave us anything. It was, hey, you need to go out and prove yourself. And Jared and Chris, those guys, they did a great job of doing that. Which I think made everybody better. I mean, they had the same mindset as I did coming in of like, hey, I'm here to play. I'm not here to sit, right? So I'm going to do everything I can, extra work, extra reps off the field to continue to develop to make this team better. And I think that's, absolutely what happened. And so, and of course we had some dogs that team. 15, I know everybody, so many people I talk to like, gosh, 15, I'm just like, I know, you don't have to tell me, I know, just hand the ball off. I know, but yeah, no, it was, the quarterback room was always super competitive, whether it was me, with Bryce, with Nick, with Chris, with Jarrett. Even with Zach Smith came in, it was always a super competitive room, which I think just made the team so much better. Yeah, true. You're rocking along in 15, and was it the Iowa State game when you got hurt? Iowa State. I remember it as it was yesterday's. Really? You remember the play? Iowa State. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it was just a zone. We called it black. It was a black. Our zone play basically was a zone to the left. I remember the time. I may be a little. It was 5 minutes and like 38 seconds were left on the clock. I remember when I glanced up there at one point. We're up by, I think it was like 10. We're up by at least 2 scores with 5 minutes left. We're on the 30-ish yard line going in. It's rainy. It was a nasty day, but we performed as best we could. In my mind, I'm thinking, hey, it's third and medium. I think like third and 5 or third and 6, something like that. Or maybe third, somewhere it was makeable. I remember catching the snap, putting the ball in the belly of the running back, and that defensive end who we're reading crashes down. That's just I should have just handed it. It would have been fine, right? But I don't hand it off. I pull it, and I'm one-on-one with that safety. I remember his number 17. It's funny, kind of ironic. That guy's still in the NFL as well. So I remember him coming down, and I'm thinking, all right, I'm a little bit bigger than him. Hey, I'm just going to kind of run over him, get the first down, and then, potentially punch it in a couple plays later. Just the domino effect of, I kind of lower my head. It wasn't like a spearing. It was just kind of down tuck. And and I just didn't tighten up enough with my shoulder pads. And whenever it hit, it kind of hit and then crunched like that. And so whenever I got hit, I was laying on the ground and I was kind of like, something just doesn't feel right. Like something was off. And so I get up, because I'm sitting there on the ground for a little bit because it was kind of a skirmish. Because I think like I hit him. We kind of got stood up, and then like 5 or 6 other players kind of came in and just kind of, made the pile fall down. But I remember sitting there, and I got up. It was fourth and short, I think 4th and 3 or something like that. And I remember looking over to the sideline. The coaches are going, "Hey, let's run speed option to the right." So basically, I would run and have the option to pitch it to the running back. Thank goodness I didn't get a chance to run that play, just because of everything that kind of transpired after that. But the funky thing was, like, this is divine intervention through and through, of just like how like God was like basically holding me back from running that play. Because whenever I got up, I was standing like over the tackle, like the left tackle. Because like when I would walk over to get the play and I would come back to call it. But then whenever I looked back to try to get back behind center, which was Kyle Fuller at the time, I couldn't walk to the right. It was like the Lord was like pushing me, like, do not go over there. You are not going to go over there. I couldn't even, I was trying so hard, I could only walk to the left. Super funky feeling. I mean, if you've ever been equilibrium knocked off, like, that was super funky. And so I called a timeout, and then I'm thinking like, okay, how am I going to get off the field without looking like I'm drunk or something? And so I remember getting on, I think it was the 30-yard line or 35-yard line. And I literally stared at that and just walked it the whole way.
Wow. Just
walked over to the sideline. And I get to the huddle, and everybody's, trying to figure out the next play. And then I sit down, and I basically, like, I told Kendall, KB, I was like, I can't go. And everybody just gets silent, and they look at me. They're like, what are you talking about? I was like, I can't go. Like, I don't know. I can't go. They're like, okay. And then, of course, and then they bring Jared in, and they go run. I think they scored that series. And I'm sitting over the sideline, just like, I just felt a knot, like, right here in my neck. Like, it was just a weird, like, it wasn't anything excruciating. It just felt like just a knot. And of course, and then one thing led to another. When got x-rays, found out that it's a fracture on C6. I had complete ligament separation between C6 and C7. And of course, then started that surgery process. And so yeah, that's how that that whole day kind of transpired against Iowa State.
Gotcha. Wow. Thanks for retelling that. And then the story about you, I guess it was the doctor who was best suited to do this surgery was at West Virginia, and your brother was there, right, in West Virginia?
Yeah, super. Another one of those things like that will never, I mean, it cannot be explained. Like, I mean, it can be, and it will be one day. Just so like how the Lord puts certain people in certain places for a reason, a season, or a lifetime, right? And whenever looking back, so my brother was in a residency program in Morgantown, West Virginia at their hospital for orthopedic surgery. And so he was doing a bunch of research after he heard out about my neck. He started doing some research on who are some of the top doctors in the country that could potentially perform on me to do the surgery, have the opportunity to potentially come back, right? Just explore all the options. Before I went and saw him, I went up to Dallas to a doctor who was supposed to be a renowned doctor, and just had a terrible experience. I remember sitting in the patient room after getting all the scans done. The doctor comes in, I have my family in there, my brothers, my grandma, my parents, and my grandpa was there too. And doctor doesn't introduce himself, didn't say, hey, everybody, the first thing he says, he turns and looks at me and he says, you'll never play football again.
Oh,
I'm like, who does that?
Right.
Like, I won't say his name, but if that doctor watches this, like, I'll just say I wanted to punch him in the face right then, but I couldn't because obviously my neck was broken. That would have been a good. But I'm just like, you don't do that. Like, I don't know. Bad experience there.
Right.
But then talking to my brother, he started doing some research, and basically, long story short, he came to the conclusion that there were 3 doctors in the country that were specialists at like C-spine surgeries. One was up in New York, the other was in Florida. And oddly, Lord willing, that the other doctor was at the hospital that he was in residency at. And we're just like, amazing. How does that happen? I mean, there's millions of hospitals across the country. Like, how does that happen? And so ended up taking a trip out there about a week later. Sat down with a doctor. His name was Dr. Emery. He's recently retired. He basically kind of wrote the book on C-spine. So C-spine surgery. He's kind of the godfather of it. And so sit down and he just goes, "Hey, Seth, I want to be honest with you." I'm like, "Please, like, but don't be too harsh." You know, he goes, "Well, I think you'll like this." I was like, "Okay, let's break it down." He goes, "By the book, based off of your fracture and with the ligament separations," he goes, "by the book, it would be a double level fusion. So C5, C6, and C7. Basically, we would fuse those all three together and you would be done football wise." He goes, "But what we can try is we can just do a single level fusion between C6 and C7 because those are the main players in this right now that need that connector. And then we can wait 6 weeks and we can get another scan. And if everything is lined up, I guess, like, I can't remember if you look at the side of your spine, there's like these like hooks that basically like stand on top of each other."
Right.
Because if all of those, what happened, one of them was flipped up because the ligaments and everything was, detached from it. He goes, "But we're going to pin that down." He goes, "If that's pinned down after 6 weeks of a scan, we're good." Wow. He goes, "If for some reason that's not sitting the way I want to, we'll have to go back in and do the second level fusion to tie that one down even more. And then you'd be done." He goes, "Either way, it's a long recovery." He goes, 6 months minimum. It's like, I mean, what's deferring 6 weeks if it's for the rest of your life or you get the opportunity to play back? I was like, yes, let's do it. Like,
right.
Enough said. So a couple of days later, schedule a surgery that day. A couple of days later, we get the surgery done. And we actually stayed in Morgantown for 2 weeks because we didn't want to fly back. We flew commercial, which shouldn't have happened, but then we came back and we wouldn't have had to do that just because we needed to be steady and still for a good, 6 weeks. And so,
right.
But yeah, so that was, and then everything kind of worked out and transpired and started the recovery process and then made it back to the 16 season.
Amazing. That was your goal, right? Your goal was to get healthy enough to play again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The goal was that, as well as, whenever I was told that you'll never play again, I took that as a challenge. And then also like as a encouragement to like other athletes that may have to go through some form of a similar surgery, right? I'm just like, hey, I wanted to kind of be a trailblazer to say, hey, you know what, even if you do have a single level, you can still play. Like, it's not, by the book. Yeah. Doctors are going to, depending on if they encourage or discourage it, that's up to that's their prerogative. But I wanted to be like, okay, I can play Division I football at the highest level possible with a level 1 fusion and still make it to the NFL. Right. And so I have the opportunity to play there. Now, obviously the NFL opportunity didn't work out. I think that was with some other factors that played into injury wise, but I think if I hadn't had the ankle injury, then I think there was a better chance that I could have made it. But I said, all going back to the beginning of the conversation, the Lord has a plan built out for you. You may not like it. It may be frustrating. It most of the time is very frustrating, very discouraging. But as long as, I was challenged, mentally and physically and spiritually, but, and we can get into that a little bit too, but yeah, had the opportunity to come back and play and to really kind of start a new chapter potentially for players who may go through a similar type of injury, if that's in that case.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's more to the story, but we got to wrap up for now. So we're gonna have to do this again to get to 16 and then beyond 16. But suffice to say that you're an inspiration. You've been through a lot, and we're glad you're still with us with Baylor football on the broadcast. Do you enjoy doing that?
Oh, I love it. Yeah. I mean, it's I know it's shifted a few times throughout the years, but I mean, get to go back, represent Baylor, still talk football, still try to stay somewhat involved. The last 3 to 4 years was tough because I had no idea what the offense was doing. I'm just going to be honest. I was just kind of like, I don't even know what's going on. I think a lot of guys were in that same scenario. But now with Spav, I mean, that's like my bread and butter. So I can talk that night and day, which is exciting and kind of gives me a little bit more encouragement there to at least not sound uneducated, at least try to. But yeah, I mean, you and Derek and Bryce Hager, it's a great crew, and excited that y'all give me the opportunity to be able to do it.
We appreciate you doing it very much. Great to have you on, man. Great to visit with you. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thanks, John.
Thanks to Seth Russell, our guest on the Sic Em Podcast, presented by Harley Davidson of Waco.